Shalom, this is Quay. Praise God, we're studying Revelation chapter 12. And we are going to continue here. So far, at 2 sessions, we've done 2 verses. So a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, on her head a crown of 12 stars. She is pregnant, crying out in birth pains, in agony to give birth. I'm going to go ahead and read verses 3 through 6, actually. We'll see how far we get. Then another sign appeared in heaven, a great fiery red dragon that had 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 royal crowns on his heads. His tail sweeps away 1/3 of the stars of heaven. It hurled them down to the earth. Now the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that whenever she gave birth, he might devour her child. And she gave birth to a son, a male child who is to rule all the nations with an iron rod. And her child was snatched away to God and to his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, so they might take care of her for 1,260 days. As we've stated before, this chapter is an overview of the entire plan of redemption from the Garden of Eden and unto the return of Jesus Christ. Within these few verses that we've read, thousands of years and various incidents are recorded here. These verses are not chronological. This is a very broad overview. And so, just to recap very quickly, the woman is the believing remnant of Israel, and she, in verse 2, she is pregnant. She's crying out in birth pains, in agony to give birth. And although literally that is, there's a literal fulfillment there with Mary who gives birth, we find out that she gave birth to a son who's to rule the nations. I'm jumping down there to verse 5. And that son who is to rule the nations is obviously Jesus Christ. And but it's also a spiritual picture of Israel, the believing remnant, as a whole, over the period of time, even between God spoke to Adam and Eve, spoke to the enemy in the garden, said, the seed of the woman is going to crush your head, Satan. The nation was, in a sense, pregnant with the expectation of the Messiah for all those years. And in one sense, with the various experiences and testings and things that the nation endured, there was, some agony involved throughout the history of Israel. But the nation was pregnant. Everybody was waiting for the Messiah. Sometimes we're pregnant with something that the Lord births within our spirit, that he's going to bring forth through us. And so we can relate to this sense of being pregnant. But then, of course, it did come down to a literal woman who literally gave birth. But in this great overview, which is very important for us to understand everything that's going on and has been going on in the unseen realm. So he says, another sign appeared in heaven, a great fiery red dragon. And of course, not going into it in this session, but another constellation. But the fiery red dragon had 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 royal crowns on his head. Well, we can, we can correlate that. We can confirm through a vision that Daniel had. And if we go back and we look in chapter 7 of Daniel, and Daniel is shown, he sees a beast with 7 heads and with 10 different crowns. And there's 3 different verses in Daniel 7 that relate that. Now, Daniel was actually seeing a beast. He was seeing a government system. So he was being shown what we would call the beast system. And the beast system is a manifestation of the one who has designed that system, who is the dragon or the serpent or the devil. And then if we talk about the beast, we're talking about either the system or the Antichrist, who will be the human agent at the appointed time of the devil himself, who will be in charge of the beast system. So I hope that will kind of help clarify when we are reading and the different symbols that are being represented. When you see dragon, or you see serpent, or you see devil, that's one and the same, because it's described. Actually, jumping down into verse 9, which is a little further than our study right now, but it clearly identifies the great dragon, the ancient serpent called the devil. So to have the understanding here, the Lord is showing the devil himself. I mean, this is the height of spiritual warfare. This is the warfare that was declared in the garden. The seed of the woman, he's going to crush your head. Yes, you're going to be allowed to bruise his heel, but he's going to crush your head. So from that moment on, what was the devil planning to do but to destroy the seed of the woman? And that is one of the main reasons that there has been a history throughout all of human history of persecution of the Jewish people. Because when the enemy found out that was going to be the nation that God was going to use to bring forth the seed, his aim was to destroy the nation. Before that, before there was even Israel, his aim was to so pollute humankind and pollute the DNA and the bloodline of humans, so that the Messiah could not come forth. That was what was happening before the flood of Noah, which is another tremendous thing that we need to know and understand. But we'll continue here in Revelation today. So we see that from the very beginning and all the way through, no matter what's happening on the earth, you see, if as believers, we are given this is spiritual warfare intelligence here. And behind the things that we see going on in the earth, this is still real. The red dragon is still trying to destroy the woman. In verse 4, it says he's standing before the woman who's about to give birth, so that whenever she gave birth, he might devour the child. Now, the way that manifested when Jesus was born was, one of the ways was through Herod and killing all of the babies 2 years old and under. Horrific thing. You see, that was happening. You know, if you just look at that on the political dimension, you just look at it from a human dimension, you will miss why it's happening. It's because the devil was trying to destroy the Messiah child, the seed of the woman. So this, he's described as having 7 heads. 7, as we've mentioned before, is the number of completion, the number of perfection, in that every aspect of something is summed up in the number 7. And so the dragon, the ancient serpent, the devil, is the manifestation of the fullness of evil. He absolutely is made up of, now because of his rebellion and fall, he is made up and comprises and represents every form of evil that there ever has been or there ever will be. But remember, the Lamb that was described in chapter 5 has 7 horns, which represent authority. And so, again, the devil doesn't literally have 7 heads, but he's pictured here because that gives us the teaching. He is the fullness of evil, and that fullness of evil will come out and be manifest in 10 different ways throughout the history of the redemption. And so his tail sweeps away 1/3 of the stars of heaven. You probably have heard, or maybe you haven't. Maybe there's the devil rebelled against God, and he ended up convincing 1/3 of all of the host of heaven to follow after him and to rebel against God. Now, we don't know if 1/3 of them all followed after him at one time. Usually simplistically we think of that, but as we study a little further in the Bible, we find out it could be a little more complex than that some of the angels probably did not fall immediately, but later. Another session we can get in and explore that aspect of it. But at any rate, this is clearly identifying, and it is giving validation to the spiritual worldview that was held by the apostles and the prophets and the apostles, the early church. This is giving clear validation that what they had believed and what they were teaching is the way that it is. This is the worldview in the spiritual realm that is the truth. So we will close out this session. We're trying to keep them short. And thank you for being with us. May the Lord, give us a strong core of spiritual overview of what is really going on in the unseen realm. And God bless you. Shalom.